Now we've done our 2JZ engine teardown, we've focused on a 2JZ powered drift car, and now we've got this incredible Datsun 1200 coupe drag car powered by the mighty 2JZ. So Gary, mate, with the hood off, straight away, it's a 2JZ, but the cylinder head is not a 2JZ GTE.
No, that's correct. Neither is the block. When we first started building it, there was word that the GE head was a better head. So we thought if we're going to use the GE head, use the GE block, and I've just stuck with it. It's worked.
Obviously a ginormous turbo hung on the side. We'll get to that in a second, but it's got a Plasmaman intake manifold that houses 2 injectors per intake runner and a Plasmaman throttle body. We've got 2 ID 2000, so Injector Dynamics 2000cc injectors per cylinder, so a total of 12 injectors in this thing. And one of the things that's a work of art is the fuel system on this side.
It is. Chris from Castle Hill Performance and Dale, they've done a great job.
It's one of those things that when you look at something like this, it looks so simple the way that it's laid out, but that's not to say it's basic. Well, it is kind of basic.
It's
but
simplified.
It's absolutely perfect. There's very, very few parts in it. It's got a mechanical fuel pump on the front here. It's got the methanol tank up the top, so the fuel comes in through the mechanical pump that's driven straight off the camshaft here, comes out as high pressure, down through this line, through the fuel rail. It's got a dual feed. Then it comes out the middle. We've got a pressure sensor here. Then straight down through the fuel pressure regulator, straight back into the tank. So unlike having a whole bunch of electric pumps and all sorts of stuff and lines everywhere, they've kind of used the position of the pump, which has to sit there, in order to mount the tank where you can, and then have all the lines running. And you can kind of be a bit confused in the fuel setup in this, where it almost looks like there's a couple of breathers and that's it. So really, really impressive, and I love the way that's done.
I got myself into car racing. From an early age, I loved motocross bikes. With my mates, we used to get out in our motorbikes, cause a bit of chaos in the neighbourhood on the tracks. Then we found out they weren't fast enough, so we started modifying them ourselves. As we got older and started to get in the cars, our licence, that kind of got me in the cars and fell in love with the Fords, I still do, as well as the Datsuns.
This is normally the part where I'd go over the other side and tell you about the turbocharger and the exhaust system, but mate, you're on that side. What's going on over there?
What we have here is a custom-made Mr. Enforcer exhaust manifold. Bolted on the end of that is a custom Pro Boost GT55 Pro Mod Turbo. HKS wastegate, getting rid of all the bad stuff.
That wastegate has got a couple of lines on it, so what style of boost controller are you using?
We use the CO2 boost controller.
Right, okay. So CO2 boost control, meaning that the HKS wastegate has got a really low pressure spring in it, meaning that you can launch the car on really low boost pressures, then use the CO2 to hold that gate shut in order to achieve really high boost pressures at the top end of the track. And that's a really good way to be able to manage the power the thing makes, because launching this thing on 30 or 40 or 50 pounds of boost pressure in order to then be able to get higher at the top end of the track often isn't always possible.
Okay, we also used to run an intercooler, water to air intercooler on the front.
Oh, it was water to air before?
Yeah, water to air. But we decided with the methanol, we didn't actually need it.
Oh, so before, when you were running the water to air style intercooler, you were running methanol fuel then as well?
We were originally running methanol, but before that we were running E85.
Gotcha.
So finding that wasn't cutting the mustard, so we changed the methanol, changed the pump to suit it.
Gotcha, yeah. So now that we're on the methanol, no need for the intercooling because that fuel is cooling that intake charge.
100% correct.
Mate, killing it. What's this thing? Sorry, I can't just down there.
The water pump. It's a Davis Craig electric water pump.
Perfect.
Keeping it nice and happy, nice and cool.
Yeah, I suppose that's one of the really nice things on that side, I suppose, having the cooling system and having an electric water pump. So when you come back to the pits, through the ECU, we can just turn the water pump on and just leave it on.
You can just run it as you go and getting towed back. You put the fans on and put the pump on and keep pumping the water through, and then so you can get it cooler.
So we said it's got a GT55 on it.
Yep.
What size sort of
Yep.
compressor has it got?
It's a 94 mil.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
All
custom made by ProBoost, running 50 PSI in it at the moment, around about the 1500 horsepower mark.
50 PSI, 1500 horsepower. For this engine to hold that,
Yep.
crank rods, pistons?
Yeah, it's all done. Yeah, we've got our Carrillo rods and pistons. Still running the standard crank. They're very strong, as everybody knows. So we haven't had any problems with that. So, like I say, if not broken, don't fix it.
Mate.
So we've left that alone.
Toyota engineering.
It's just at its best.
Cylinder head? Have you got cam
Yeah,
shafts?
it's got Camtech cams in it. The Titan gears on the front, Supertech valves and springs.
And this is probably one of the things as well on the 2JZ engine that back in the day we used to run the factory 2JZ coils
That's
with the
correct.
capacitive style ignition system. But as time's gone along, unfortunately, some of the parts that are now missing for a 2JZ are the factory coils are very expensive or very hard to
Hard
find.
to get, yes.
Whereas now the IGN 1A coils have got huge ignition power, and for a setup like this, the ECU drives them directly. They make a heap of grunt, and it's one of the things you just don't need to worry about anymore.
No, that's it. It's one less thing you don't have to worry about. It's the 2010 Winter Nationals when we stepped up the car with a bit of boost and all that, and the wheelie bars probably weren't good enough for what we're putting in, and the actual car probably come out about 2 foot off the ground. The whole four wheels were off the ground, pointed straight up in the air and come down, and I had to go and, check myself, and then later on, as we were going along, at Eastern Creek, I was on a Friday night, getting ready to go home, decided let's have another run with one of my mates. We were trying to get to a certain point with our times then at that time, and we ended up and found out that the car didn't like it, and the oil filter exploded, throwing oil all under the wheel, which sent me flying across into my opponent's lane. And I managed to save it, so I thought, yeah, I've done it. And then next thing you know, it just sent me flying into the wall, and wasn't a good time for me.
Now here's another example of why the 2JZ shines. This is a Datsun 1200 coupe. It was originally equipped with an A12, a teeny tiny little 4-cylinder engine, but Gary's managed to shoehorn the mighty 2JZ into this thing. Yes, it's long, but it's narrow and it's short, meaning that it can fit in here so nicely, and for the right setup, this can be a serious drag car, but with a relatively simple engine, making it affordable and making it reasonable for all races. And it's because of this that these 2JZs are just so popular. They're so versatile, and you really can fit them in just about anything.
Always loved the 2Js. At the time I was getting the racing, the 2J was the big kid on the block. They were just starting to come in, like no one had really heard of them. And then all of a sudden, guys all over Australia and around the world are running super times. And I thought, that's what I want. We just took it from there and stepped it up, and we got to where we are now, and we're in a happy place.
In here, as tight as I expected it to be, it's got an automatic transmission. It wouldn't be a drag car unless it had a 2-speed power glide. And this thing has got straight cut billet gears and a high volume oil pump fitted to it. Goes through the tail shaft, which is actually sitting right here beside me. If I put my fingers up there, I can feel the front uni. Not ideal if the thing was running. Then down the back, it's got a McDonald's Brothers 9-inch diff. It's got 3.56 gear ratios. It's got strange axles, and it's got a sway bar with a 4-link set up in the back. So that's sort of what's happening in the driveline part of this thing. Shifter-wise, up the top here, being a 2-speed, so we've got park, reverse, neutral, second, and then first. Nice thing about that, you can shift this manually if you like, but Gary's also got this air shifter set up. So you take off in first gear on the trans brake. So when we've got the trans brake applied, that means that we've got first gear and reverse gear engaged at the same time. So we can go full throttle, bring the thing up on the torque converter, then let go of the trans brake. It'll release the reverse gear. We take off in first. As soon as we're ready to hit that second gear at exactly the right RPM and exactly the right point on the racetrack, This air solenoid here will let CO2 through. That plunger will shoot out and smash it into the next gear so that you get a perfect shift every time. Now, adding to the simplicity of this car, Gary's set it up with all of the Haltech stuff, all the CAN-based stuff. So there's very, very little wiring in here. We've got the CAN keypad, so that's a 15-button keypad that's just got the little 4-core cable that comes out of that. We've got the Haltech dash, which has just got the 4-core communications cable that goes across to the engine management system. And Gary's just recently pulled all the fuses and relays out of this car and replaced them with the Haltech PDM. So with that PDM, he's got direct power supply to the water pump. He's got direct power supply to all of the devices that can then be switched on and off through the keypad. And there's no fuses and no relays to worry about. The complexity of the wiring has been cut down so much. It's beautiful in here. It almost looks like it's not wired, that there's just nothing in here. Being a drag car, Gary's opted for the Elite 2500 T series. So the T for torque management means that this Elite 2500 series ECU has targeted drive shaft RPM control and targeted engine RPM control. So what that means is that as soon as we release the trans brake, we've got a race timer that starts for the quarter-mile drag race. Every incremental time, so at 0.2, 0.3, 0.4 of a second into that run, Gary will have a target drive shaft RPM and a target engine RPM. If the car hasn't met that drive shaft curve, that means that it's either bogged down or it's simply that too much power has been taken out of it. The torque management function will increase the engine power in order to achieve that desired target drive shaft RPM. Likewise, if it goes over that drive shaft RPM, that means that it's broken out into wheel spin, and instead of aborting the run, which is what you would normally do or try and pedal it, the engine management system will see how far over the drive shaft target you are, and it'll reduce engine power by either dropping boost pressure out of it or dropping individual cylinder events in order to get you back on target. Now, this might not make you run a PB, but it will let you finish the race. Over to my left here, we've got a couple of the systems. The first one, the fire system. If we're pulling that, we know we're in trouble. We've got a fire emergency suppression system down here. The next one across is the CO2 bottle. So this is the one that's supplying the pressure in order to hit our shifter, as well as do our CO2 boost control. So that regulated CO2 pressure is going to the wastegate through a bunch of solenoids to either fill or dump in order to achieve our target wastegate hat pressure. Next to it, the fun blue bottle, the nitrous bottle. This one's being used because it's an automatic transmission. This one's being used to give us a little bit of a spray of nitrous to help the engine get up on the torque converter faster, so that when we're racing in competition, as you come up to stage the car, gives you a lot more confidence knowing that it's going to come on boost and be ready for action in sort of 1 to 2 seconds, compared to taking 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds to come up on the converter when we're in competition. So that's a really important thing to have. This car's also got a nitrous purge system, meaning a little purge solenoid. Its job is to purge all the air out of the nitrous line so that when the ECU demands that the nitrous solenoid activate, there is nitrous all the way up to the solenoid, meaning you don't have to purge all that air out first. So it gives us a much more consistent and a reliable nitrous shot in order to get it up on the converter. Of course, that's all done through the Elite Series ECU. We've got our purge button here on the keypad. That signal goes into the Elite ECU. The Elite ECU then tells the Haltech PDM to supply direct power to that purge solenoid. It purges for as long as I press that button, and having a purge solenoid, I'd be silly not to try it. And with a combination of all those things, that's how you turn a Datsun 1200 Coupe into a fire-breathing 1500 horsepower, hopefully 6-second drag car. As always, thanks so much for watching. My name's Scott. Catch you next time.
Thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, smash that like button. We put out a new video every week and sometimes even two. So don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more awesome content.